The unexpected war, they said the war was over. They said the humans had agreed to peace. They were wrong. On the outer rim of the Varnak Empire, inside a tall glass military tower, Commander Varela stood in front of a room full of alien officers. She was proud, tall, and deadly, known across her world as the Chainbreaker. Her green skin shimmered under the lights. Her silver hair was tied tight. She wore black armor, sharp at the edges, just like her temper. Today she was angry. A human had been assigned to her ship. A human. She slammed her fist on the table. They send that thing to command me? I am of Varnak blood. We burned 10 planets to win this war. The officers nodded carefully, but no one dared add to her fire. She turned sharply as the door opened, and there he was, a tall human male, quiet, calm, wearing simple black uniform pants and a tight shirt. No armor, no weapons, just a datapad in one hand. His name was Captain Reed Carson. He stepped into the room like he didn't care about her rage, like her reputation didn't matter. He nodded once. Good morning. Varela's jaw tightened. She stepped forward, boots hitting the floor hard. I do not answer to you, human. Carson said nothing. She moved closer. You're a mistake. You're soft and weak. Still, no reaction. So she did the unthinkable. She spat in his face. The room froze. Gasps. One officer looked away. Another reached for his comm, unsure if a fight had just started. Carson blinked once. No emotion. No anger. He pulled a cloth from his pocket, wiped his face slowly, then calmly dropped the datapad on the table. Then, he moved, fast, silent, precise. Before anyone could react, Varela's arm was twisted behind her back. In a blink, she was in the chair she once stood beside. Thick rope, how had he even carried it, was already around her. Her mouth opened to shout, but the human gently pulled a cloth over her lips and tied it firmly. She was gagged, eyes wide, furious, but silent. Carson turned to the room. My name is Captain Reed Carson. I don't care about your opinions. He looked at each officer in turn. I was sent here to prepare your fleet for real war, not politics, not pride. War. If anyone here doesn't like it, you can leave. No one moved. The human's voice was calm, but his actions had been louder than any threat. Carson finally looked down at the bound alien commander. He leaned in and said one sentence, soft but clear. I've seen bigger monsters fall harder. Don't be one of them. Then he walked out. Varela sat in the chair, chest heaving, heart racing. She had been trained to fear no enemy. But this human, he didn't use power. He was power. The unexpected war, they said the war was over. They said the humans had agreed to peace. They were wrong. On the outer rim of the Varnak Empire, inside a tall glass military tower, Commander Varela stood in front of a room full of alien officers. She was proud, tall, and deadly, known across her world as the Chainbreaker. Her green skin shimmered under the lights. Her silver hair was tied tight. She wore black armor, sharp at the edges, just like her temper. Today, she was angry. A human had been assigned to her ship. A human. She slammed her fist on the table. They send that thing to command me? I am of Varnak blood. We burned 10 planets to win this war. The officers nodded carefully, but no one dared add to her fire. She turned sharply as the door opened. And there he was. A tall human male. Quiet. Calm. Wearing simple black uniform pants and a tight shirt. No armor. No weapons. Just a datapad in one hand. His name was Captain Reed Carson. He stepped into the room like he didn't care about her rage, like her reputation didn't matter. He nodded once. Good morning. Varela's jaw tightened. She stepped forward, boots hitting the floor hard. I do not answer to you, human. Carson said nothing. She moved closer. You're a mistake. You're soft and weak. Still, no reaction. So she did the unthinkable. She spat in his face. The room froze. Gasps. One officer looked away. Another reached for his comm, unsure if a fight had just started. Carson blinked once. No emotion. No anger. He pulled a cloth from his pocket, wiped his face slowly, then calmly dropped the datapad on the table. Then he moved, fast, silent, precise. Before anyone could react, Varela's arm was twisted behind her back. In a blink, she was in the chair she once stood beside. Thick rope, how had he even carried it, was already around her. Her mouth opened to shout, but the human gently pulled a cloth over her lips and tied it firmly. She was gagged, eyes wide, furious, but silent. Carson turned to the room. "My name is Captain Reed Carson. I don't care about your opinions." He looked at each officer in turn. "I was sent here to prepare your fleet for real war, not politics, not pride. War. If anyone here doesn't like it, you can leave." No one moved. The human's voice was calm, but his actions had been louder than any threat. Carson finally looked down at the bound alien commander. He leaned in and said one sentence, soft but clear. "I've seen bigger monsters fall harder. Don't be one of them." Then he walked out. Varela sat in the chair, chest heaving, heart racing. She had been trained to fear no enemy. But this human, he didn't use power. He was power. Tactical obedience. The training floor buzzed with movement. Varnak officers moved in rows, holding stun blades and marching in formation. The walls echoed with sharp commands, metallic boots hitting the floor in rhythm. It was organized but slow, predictable, full of pride, not purpose. Captain Reed Carson stood at the back with his arms crossed. He said nothing. Commander Varela stood beside him, watching her people struggle to meet human precision. Her jaw tightened. "They think this is strength," she muttered. Reed replied calmly, "No, they think this is enough. That's more dangerous." They had trained together for 3 days now. No spitting, no tying, no yelling, just cold respect and quiet understanding. Raids were increasing near the border systems. Their ship would be sent into deep conflict zones soon. There was no time for pride, but not everyone liked that. Among the trainees stood Lieutenant Korak, one of Varela's loyal officers. He had a thick build, rough skin, and eyes full of judgment. Since the day Reed took command beside Varela, Korak had stared at the human like he was a parasite. Now, during drills, Korak stepped forward and slammed his blade into the practice dummy with more force than needed. Then, he turned. "I request a real fight," Korak said loudly. "With the human." Silence spread across the room. Reed didn't react. "This isn't about ego. It's about learning." Korak sneered. "Then teach me." Varela stepped forward fast. "Denied." "But," Reed held up a hand, "I accept." The floor was cleared. No armor, no enhancements, just two beings. One human, one Varnak, standing in the middle, stun blades in hand. Varela watched with narrowed eyes. Korak wanted blood, not training. Reed knew that. Yet he stood calm, as always. The horn blew. Korak lunged forward like a beast, raw strength in every step. Reed moved sideways, letting the blade cut air. Korak turned, roaring, and swung again. And again. Sparks flew from the floor, but Reed was never there. He ducked, slid, pivoted, and with a smooth step, placed his hand on Korak's wrist, twisted, and dropped him face first to the ground. One smooth, silent gag move followed. The same knot. The same cloth, the same message. Korak lay still, humiliated, breathing heavy through the gag. Gasps filled the room, not from shock this time, but from understanding. Reed stood, calm as ever, and looked around the room. "This is not about domination," he said. "It's about survival. If you can't move together, fight together, and learn from your enemy, you're already dead." Varela said nothing, but deep down, she knew. They had just witnessed something more powerful than strength, control, without cruelty. Later, as the training ended and the officers filed out quietly, Varela walked beside Reed. "You didn't have to accept that fight." "Yes, I did." "Why?" He looked at her. "Because your people don't listen to peace. They listen to silence made powerful." She nodded slowly. "I'm starting to understand why your kind wins." Reed looked at her. "I didn't come to win." She raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" He looked at the stars outside the wide glass wall. "To make sure we all survive." In that moment, Varela realized something strange. She no longer saw Reed as the man who gagged her. She saw him as the one holding everything together. The test of loyalty. The message came in the middle of the night. A red light blinked on Commander Varela's wall panel. Her eyes opened instantly. No dreams. Just cold reality. She tapped the screen, private encrypted order, from high command. She read the words once, then twice, and felt her blood go cold. Remove the human. That was the command, not in public, not in battle. Quietly, no scandal. No trial, just silence him. Her hands trembled for the first time in years. They didn't trust Reed. Worse, they feared him. She stood by the window looking out at the stars. The planet below spun slowly, its surface glowing with city lights and orbit rings. Everything looked peaceful. But inside her mind, war had already started. Hours later, she walked into the tactical chamber where Captain Reed Carson stood over a glowing map. He was calm, focused as always. He looked up. "You're early." "You trust me?" she asked suddenly. He tilted his head. "I fought beside you. Why wouldn't—" "I know reasons, just questions." She stepped closer. "I received a command," she said, "from my superiors." Reed's face didn't change. "What kind of command?" She looked him in the eye. "They want me to end your command. Quietly. You would disappear. No one would ask." Still, no fear in his face, only silence. Then he spoke, soft and clear. "Are you going to follow it?" Varela stared at him, then said, "No." She turned off the lights in the room. Only the war map glowed now. "You're more useful than they understand," she continued. "You scare them. Because you don't yell, you don't beg for power, you just take control. I'm not trying to rule your people." "I know," she said. "That's why you're dangerous." Reed stepped back from the table. "So what happens now?" "I protect you," Varela said. "And if they find out?" She smirked. "Let them try me." But someone else had already heard everything. Hidden in the shadows behind the wall panel, Lieutenant Korak pressed 2 fingers against his earpiece. "The commander has chosen the human," he whispered. "Prepare the strike." Back in the main hall, the officers gathered for a new briefing. Reed entered last. Varela stood tall at the front. "We received movement near Sector 5, she said. "This might be the first test of our new alliance. We move out at dawn." Murmurs of approval until one voice rose from the back. "Korak, why should we follow a human into battle?" The room tensed. Reed didn't react. Varela's eyes narrowed. "We've done this already." But Korak kept going. "He shames our people. He binds our commander with rope. And now she defends him over her own blood." Gasps. Sharp whispers. Reed looked at Varela. "Say the word." She shook her head slightly, but Korak moved. He pulled a hidden blaster from his side and aimed it, not at Reed, but at Varela. "Your loyalty is misplaced," he growled. Time slowed. Reed moved. One blink, one silent step. And in the next moment, Korak's arm was twisted behind his back. The gun clattered to the floor. Reed had him on his knees. Gagged again. Same knot. Same silence. Same message. Varela stepped forward. She looked into Korak's wide, furious eyes and said only 2 words. "You're dismissed." As the guards dragged him away, Reed looked at her. You knew he would try something. She nodded. That was your real test. He raised an eyebrow. Did I pass? She looked at him fully now. No walls, no armor. You passed me. His silence, her signal. The sky above Outpost Carl 7 was dark. No sun, no stars, just clouds, and the threat of war behind them. Commander Varela stood at the edge of the lookout deck, her hands behind her back, armor tight and polished. Wind whipped through her silver hair. Her eyes were locked on the empty horizon. They'll strike soon, she said. Behind her, Captain Reed Carson checked the defense grid without a word. The warning beacon from Sector 5 had stopped flashing. That meant only one thing: the enemy had arrived. Inside the control room, her officers moved quickly but nervously. Ever since Korak's betrayal, trust had been shaky. Varela had declared her alliance with the human captain openly, but not everyone had accepted it. Some still watched Reed with suspicion, others watched with fear, but none dared question him, because Reed didn't bark orders, he just gave results. Tremor shook the floor, then another, then the radar lit up, multiple unknown vessels inbound. Shields up, Varela shouted, weapons locked into place. Defense towers lit the sky red, sirens screamed across the outpost. She pressed the side of her helmet and opened a secure comm link, signaled the fleet requesting full support, but the signal didn't send. She tried again. Still nothing. Communications jammed. Reed stepped up beside her. Can't reach your people, he said. They're cutting us off, she replied. Surrounding us, trying to isolate command. She turned to her team. Activate emergency flare towers, all three. The officer at the panel shook his head. We only have enough power for one. Varela clenched her teeth. One flare, one chance. 3 towers. She looked across the deck, thinking fast. I'll take Tower A. You take Tower C. Reed raised an eyebrow. And Tower B? She narrowed her eyes. If someone's watching, they'll expect us to meet in the middle. We won't. Varela ran across the upper levels, her boots slamming metal. The outpost shook again. Smoke poured from the western edge. Explosions had begun. She reached Tower A, inserted the code, and slammed her palm to the ignition pad. A bright orange flare burst into the sky, burning a path through the clouds. She sighed in relief, then tapped her comm. Reed confirmed Tower C. Static. She tried again. Still nothing. Then, Tower C. Under fire. Her heart skipped. He was in trouble. She turned and ran. The sound of gunfire echoed through the corridors of Tower C. She passed injured soldiers. Sparks flew from broken walls. When she reached the base of the tower, smoke covered the entrance, and inside the smoke, 3 enemy raiders lay unconscious on the floor. Varela stepped through slowly. Up ahead, through the fog, Reed stood alone. Helmet cracked. Blood on his face, his uniform torn but still standing behind him, the flare burning bright. She ran to him. He didn't look at her, just stared forward, watching for more. You okay? She asked. He nodded. She touched his arm gently. You didn't answer my call? He looked at her then. Calm. Steady. You didn't need it. That moment said everything. No speech, no orders, no hero pose, just Reed. Always there. Always quiet. Always deadly when it mattered. Later, as the reinforcements finally arrived and the skies cleared, Varela stood beside him once again, just like the beginning. Only this time, she wasn't unsure. This time, she trusted his silence more than most people's promises. The human who didn't blink. The emergency was over. The flares had burned. Reinforcements had landed. The enemy ships retreated into deep space. Outpost Carol 7 stood strong. But peace doesn't last long when politics return. A sleek silver cruiser landed at the edge of the fortress. Its sharp wings bore the seal of the Varnak High Command. Soldiers lined up, officers straightened their armor, and General Arnex Vel, Varela's superior and the oldest surviving warrior of the Varnak campaigns, stepped onto the landing deck. He wore no helmet. His green face was marked with gold tattoos, his eyes like glass, cold, sharp, unreadable. He didn't speak when he saw Reed, but his gaze said everything. Inside the main chamber, Reed stood beside Varela as ordered, but slightly behind. Just enough to be polite. Ornex took the central seat. "You've changed, Varela," he said flatly. "I've adapted. To a human. I've survived with him, not under him, beside him." Ornex turned his head toward Reed. "You. Step forward." Reed obeyed. No fear, no smirk, just presence. "You silenced my officer." "Twice," Ornex said. Reed nodded. "He attempted mutiny." "Twice." "You took control without command." "I responded to danger, quietly." "You believe silence is strength?" Reed answered without blinking. "Loud men die first." The chamber was quiet. Ornex leaned back in his chair. "I've watched your kind. You don't rise through war. You survive it. Like cockroaches." Reed didn't flinch. "We survive because we don't play games. We end them." Varela looked at the general. "Sir, this man saved our outpost. Without him, Carol 7 would have fallen." "Would it?" Ornex asked. "Or would we have simply replaced its leaders?" Her fists clenched. Reed spoke again. Calm. Sharp. "I don't need your approval. I need your permission to keep saving your people." Ornex stood. For a moment it seemed like he might strike, but instead he walked around Reed, studying him like a weapon, then said, "You didn't blink when I insulted your species. You didn't beg for your rank. You didn't speak unless it mattered." He paused. "Varela." "Yes, General?" "You may keep your human, for now, but if he fails even once, I'll remove him myself." Loudly. Then he walked out. Outside, Varela and Reed stood alone as the general's ship lifted into the sky. She looked at him. "You didn't blink." "I don't blink for politicians." She smirked. "And you wonder why they fear you." That night, as the outpost lights dimmed, Varela sat on the war deck with Reed. She passed him a metal cup of strong drink. "For silence," she said. He raised his cup. "For victory." "No," she corrected. "For loyalty." They drank together, no rank, no fear, just quiet respect that had been forged in fire, challenge, and control. And for the first time, Varela thought something she had never thought before. Maybe this human wasn't just her protector. Maybe he was her equal. The gagged general, the betrayal came at dawn. Outpost Carol 7 was quiet, calm. The stars above were clear for the first time in days. But calm skies often hide the storm. Commander Varela was reviewing new fleet data when a private alert pinged her console. Unauthorized override detected. Sector command rerouted. Fleet now under General Ornex Vel. Her eyes widened. He'd taken her ships, and he hadn't told her. "Where's Captain Reed?" she asked aloud. A young officer replied nervously. "He's been ordered to quarters. By the general." Her voice hardened. "He what?" 2 levels below, Reed sat on a bench in the weapons hold surrounded by 4 armed guards. He wasn't cuffed. He wasn't locked in. They just thought he was out of the way. But Reed Carson was never out of the way. He was waiting. General Ornex stood at the fleet command deck now, alone in the center, issuing orders to redirect the full Varnak fleet toward Sector 9, but the coordinates weren't for defense. They were for conquest. Ornex had planned it all. He would take back power the humans had softened. He would start a new war and erase Reed's influence forever. What he didn't expect was Varela. She stormed into the command deck. "You had no right," he smiled calmly. "I have every right. You removed my officer, stole my ships, and now you aim them at innocent systems? They are not innocent. They are weak. And what about Reed? He's being removed. Peacefully." The doors hissed open. Ornex turned. Reed Carson stood there. Alone. No guards. No weapons. Just walking. He stopped at the edge of the chamber. Everyone froze. Then, Ornex scoffed. Still silent, human? Reed slowly raised one hand and dropped something on the floor. Rope. The same rope he had used on Varela, on Korak. The same symbol. Everyone, watching, understood what it meant. Ornex narrowed his eyes. You wouldn't dare. Reed moved. Faster than anyone could follow. In one clean motion, Ornex's arms were pulled behind his back. His mouth was forced shut by a familiar cloth. Gagged. Bound. Silenced. In front of the entire command. The fleet officers gasped. No one moved to stop him. Varela stepped forward, eyes burning. She faced the watching soldiers and said clearly, "The human is now in command." Reed stood over the general, then looked to the room. He spoke, only once. "One more order like his, and I won't use rope next time." Then he turned and walked out. That day, the message spread across the stars. A human silenced a Varnak general, not with weapons, not with war, with silence and control. Later, Varela sat beside Reed in the briefing room. He looked at her. "You stood beside me again," she replied. "No, this time I stood behind you." He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" She smiled slightly. "Because, when the moment came, you didn't blink." He said nothing, just handed her a fresh rope coil. She laughed and didn't give it back.